And welcome back to another Inside Texas Live show. It's our Thursday night live, and we're here to talk about the Texas defense. What is there to fix? Where should we go next? Expectations for players, and then at first, we're going to do the newly dropped schedule reveal. We're going to get into that a little bit as well because that's obviously a very hot topic at the moment. But first, guys, go ahead and hop on over to Inside Texas right now and join for $1. Subscribe, come be a part of our community. So much fun over there right now because you have the schedule reveal to talk about. You have portal news, you have the Michigan Bowl game, and it's pretty a lot of things going on with Old Michigan right now. So plenty to talk about over Inside Texas. Take advantage of the flash sale and hop on over, come join us, guys. But welcome for the very first time to Inside Texas, Mr. Clint. How we doing, guy?
Doing good, man. I'm glad to be on here.
Welcome to the panel, man. And again, Clint and Pack, very familiar with one another, doing good work together over at the Pack and Clint show, doing a fantastic job. Welcome back, Pack. How you doing, brother?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, man. Thanks for asking. You got two guys that are in the middle of finals weeks, so coming to spend some time with Inside Texas, means a lot. Appreciate it. Let's get to it. We're gonna pop up the schedule here, and as you can see right there, Texas opens with Texas State led by G.J. Kinney, the Bobcats quarterback Brad Jackson returning. A very fun first matchup, in my opinion. That is a team that's going to be trying to get a lot better on defense, but offensively, they will challenge Texas at least a little bit schematically. They use a lot of tempo, and so I think that's a really fun first matchup considering who you play in week 2. Ohio State comes to Austin, the rematch of last year's 14-7 loss in Columbus, which was a rematch of the Cotton Bowl loss. And obviously that ended in pretty dramatic fashion. When you see Ohio State on the schedule, second week of the season, guys, what's your initial thoughts?
I'm glad it's not week 1. You get 1 week to prepare, you get 1 week to get some reps out there, get a little bit of a warm-up game. I think in general, we've seen Texas, when they have that 1 week, have a lot of success in week 2 against these really highly ranked teams. So
yeah, I have the exact same thoughts as Pack. I thought having Ohio State week 1 this past year, especially on the road, it's not necessarily ideal, but I think having that one game to see what you have on the field, to get used to everything, I think that having Ohio State week 2 is a lot better than week 1.
Yeah, no, that's really well said. I mean, you need the tune-up game. Remember the old Longest Yard, the remake with Adam Sandler, and that's a tune-up game. You play somebody like that, and you hopefully you handle your business. You look a little better than non-conference next year than you did this year. Get prepared to host a really big opponent, a team that could very well be coming off back-to-back titles. Ohio State's going to be in it. They're, in my opinion, one of 3 teams that can win a title this year. But moving on, so we're going to get through this whole thing, and we have a lot of defense to talk about. You got the Roadrunners, another fun matchup. Cool. We're playing all the battles of I-35 North and South here. You've got San Marcos involved in San Antonio, so fun matchups there. But let's get to the real part, the fun stuff. Texas will play its first SEC game of the season on the road at Neyland Stadium. Would be borderline shocked if that's not a night game to start the season. Again, it probably matters how these teams open to start the year. But yeah, opening at Tennessee. What are we thinking about that one?
Yeah, it's battle of the UTs, battle of the orange teams. It's just a lot of little things that the fan bases like to argue back and forth with. Neyland Stadium is one of the best in the SEC. One of the best in the nation. It's always going to be loud. It's always going to be packed. Depends on what Tennessee's personnel has next year, but I think it's going to be a good test for us going into SEC play. I'm really excited for that game.
All right. What about you, Pack?
Yeah, I think Clint said it pretty well. It's a good test for Texas. Going to Neyland, it's going to be a really hostile environment. It's also going to be a good litmus test to see how much progress Arch Manning's made from last year to this year, because his road struggles have been pretty well established by now, pretty well seen. So getting to see what it looks like at the end of September and having an ability to kind of have a real litmus test and see what progress has been made and what he looks like on the road before you get an entire month to look at those issues and fix them is really important.
Yeah, that was really well said by both of you guys. Texas was a far different football team home and away this year. And so that is the first opportunity, the next opportunity that we'll get to see Texas in a true road environment. How do we look like in the penalty department? How does this O-line perform? Which, again, it's going to be a retinkered and relatively new O-line as far as, how many snaps they played together. But it's going to be a big one. I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun. Again, Clint, you touched on the fun things the fans get into. You've got the UT versus UT. I remember getting into it with all of them during the World Series a couple of years ago, the College World Series, and the fan bases seem to rally each other up one another pretty easily because they each clearly want to. Who's a real UT? It's a silly thing to talk about, but a fun matchup, but nonetheless. Then you have your bye week. And this is, in my opinion, where I start to sigh just a hair. It's a pretty dang early bye week when you consider what Texas has for the back 2/3 of that schedule. But let's start with Oklahoma. Oklahoma also has a bye week on October 3rd. Yes, second Saturday in October. Texas, OU, both off a bye week. We saw this, I believe, 2 years ago. What are our thoughts on that matchup, guys?
Yeah, I'll take this one. To me, it's kind of as simple as until I see Sarkisian struggle against the Venables defense, I'm kind of now at the point where I'll take Texas to win these games. I've seen Sarkisian now face this style of defense where it's more pressure based. It's a lot of 5 and 6 man pressures and running, whether it's eyes or cover one, whatever it is on the back end. I've seen Sarkisian have a lot of success against those defenses. He's done it to A&M twice now. He's done it to Venables all 4 years they've played against each other. So until I'm proven wrong, I'm gonna take Texas to win that game, and I feel pretty comfortable about it. They have to fix a lot in terms of their wide receiver room, OU specifically. So, and they also have to do a lot in terms of retooling the O line. So that's a game I'm not super concerned about at the moment.
Yeah, I know both teams will be really active in the portal as well. That game, we'll see what these teams look like. OU is going to be replacing some quality players on defense, of course. What about you, Clint? What do you have?
Yeah, I'm exactly siding with Pack on this one. I feel like this is one of those games where, just like Mike Elko, in a sense, even though they've only played twice, Sark seems to have those coaches' numbers when he plays against them. The one outlier for Sark losing to Brent Venables was when they had Jeff Lebby and they had a really good explosive offense at Oklahoma. But other than that, we've seen them do really well, holding them to, I think, 3 of the last 4 matchups. They haven't scored a single touchdown. So I wouldn't even say it's even a Sark versus Venables thing. It's more so PK also being able to do well against Brent Venables, obviously, other than that 1 year. But I like that game, especially right before the 3-game home stretch. I feel very confident that we could really go into November being 7-1.
I mean, you got Colin Simmons with a chance to go 3-0 against Oklahoma. You got some OU is going to treat that one like their Super Bowl. I mean, and I hate to say that because people overuse that term, but they've got to be sick and tired of losing that game and the way that game has gone in 3 of the last 4 years. The way that the fan bases obviously go at it on social media and whatnot, that one, there will be blood, of course, always for that one. But yeah, and so again, as you guys both just said, Sark seems to have Venables somewhat figured out. It felt like we could have scored 45 points even in the loss to Oklahoma in 2023. And again, it's a lot of these games, sometimes, we're our own worst enemy, and that's what keeps us from, maybe, the 34-3 game, if, basically we laid an egg in the first quarter offensively in that one before things really kind of got going. But I mean, that's college football. You're going to have those moments, and you got to give credit to Oklahoma if they are a tough defense to prepare for. And so Venables always seems to kind of win an early battle before Sark really kind of takes control of the situation there in the state fair. Moving on, guys. Florida, Vengeance Week. A lot of talk about that game this year. Obviously, that's why Texas is not playing in the college football playoffs. The Gators come to town, obviously under new leadership, John Summerall. Thoughts on the Gators? Do you think that they're going to be maybe a little bit boost as far as their capabilities on the field next year? I mean, we can't say too much because they handled us and did it rather easily.
Yeah, I think so. If you go back and you watch their defense and you look at them through the first 7 weeks, they were probably a top 3 defense in the SEC, top 5 at worst. And that was having something like 3 or 4 starters out pretty much every game. And now they get Buster Faulkner, who's one of the best OCs in the country, really creative. I do think they downgraded at DC. I don't think Brad White is as good as Ron Roberts, but they'll still be super talented there. And I think they can get away with a worse defense if they just have competent quarterback playing and competent offenses, which I imagine they'll have with Faulkner there. So, and Summerall's a really good coach. He's one of those guys who's really process oriented. I think he's going to have them playing really well by the time they play Texas. So I think that's going to be a tougher game than most people expect for Texas.
No, yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, brother.
Right. I was gonna say, I agree with this point about Buster Faulkner. That's definitely gonna be a big piece for them because a lot of where they struggled this year was offensively. Other than the run game with Jaden Ball, they really had no other way to move the ball downfield. DJ Lagway had a very tough year. Obviously, everyone's seen that, but I think next year's gonna be very interesting to see the strides that he takes, to see how improved he is and how much better of a player he is next year. Just to put a plane right there. Defense, I'm expecting to still be very good, even though they may not have the same caliber DC. They still have a lot of great personnel on defense. And I mean, they're just a very talented team overall. So I don't think it's ever going to be a super easy game other than 2024 where they had the third string quarterback in. But other than that, I think it's going to be a good game. I think having it at home definitely helps a lot. And even though I think they're going to be better, I think Texas can win this game, but it's going to be definitely an underrated game going into 2026.
Yeah, and I mean, there's times where obviously Texas has struggled coming off OU week and what they've looked like going into that one. I do think the Faulkner hire is huge for Florida. I think that's another hire that's not going to get the publicity that it'll probably get or deserve. And then a couple of years later, people will be like, wow, this guy, and so this is a big stage. He has a chance to continue to further his reputation as a play caller. So I agree with you. What does DJ Lagway do as far as growth? And do they still have the same back? Because if they do, that goes a long ways. Moving forward, one thing I will say, and we didn't even mention, but that road game at Neyland, there's scuttle right now. Obviously, Tim Banks is out as DC. There's scuttle about Jim Knowles potentially being interested in that job. He's going to improve a defense a lot. So I'm honestly kind of hoping that that's not the guy that ends up over there. But I do. Y'all agree? We'll get into it. We'll go through these. It's going to be a tough game. Again, they've got a lot to fix on their defense. Texas has a lot, or a little bit less to fix on defense, in my opinion. Missouri was pretty rough there at the end of the year. Moving on, though, Ole Miss comes to town, the Rebs. Obviously, a lot going on with Ole Miss at the moment. What are y'all's thoughts about them next season and what they'll look like by midseason when they come to Austin?
I think this is a very tough game to really pinpoint on like what you could predict it to be, because we don't know by the end of the season what their personnel is still going to be, what players end up going to LSU with Lane Kiffin, who they end up. I mean, Pete Golding, we also don't know as a head coach what he can do. So, I mean, there's a lot of factors going to this. I think Ole Miss, in my opinion, the SEC is probably the biggest question mark going into next year on how good or bad they're going to be. I think, though, Ole Miss, they're still going to have a lot of talent on that team. I don't think Pete Golding's going to be a terrible head coach. Obviously, I think there's going to be those first-year struggles that most head coaches have. You have the rare situations with Cignetti, who just right off the bat, they get a team rolling. Obviously, same with Florida. Having it at home is going to help, but I think we'll win that game overall.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what he said. In terms of Ole Miss, I think it's tough. You got to see how much their portal strategy changes with Golding versus Kiffin, because Kiffin's pretty infamously been a portal over high school recruiting guy. Who knows if Golding's going to have the same approach, especially when you consider where he came from, right? He came from Alabama. That's a school and that's an approach that's really heavily focused on high school recruiting. Mm-hmm. So if the roster doesn't see a lot of turnover, if they don't get a lot of guys from the portal, and it's a lot of what you saw this year, I don't know that I'd be super worried about Ole Miss. I think the defense is pretty bad. And then offensively, without Kiffin, I think you're going to see a pretty significant drop-off there. You'd have that pretty much anywhere that Kiffin left. It's the same thing if the offensive nucleus for Texas left, or if Grubb and DeBoer left Alabama. He's one of those guys. So right. I think you're going to see a real drop-off offensively for Ole Miss next year. It really just depends on what Golding can do in terms of staff hires and everything else to elevate the defense to be what it was a year ago instead of what it is this year.
No, that's really well said, guys. You don't really know exactly what they look like. Turnover is going to be something that I think every Rebel fan is going to be really, really worried about, because you've seen situations like these before. I mean, it could be a very big number. But again, they're kind of used to that. As you said, Pac, portal is kind of Kiffin's thing. So yeah, tough to predict on that. Real quick, we'll get to Mississippi State before we hit a sponsor break. Crazy game in Starkville last year. Do y'all give Mississippi State much of a chance to come into Austin and find a scare like that in the Horns?
No, not really. I think the one interesting thing though is, other than the 2024 game where Mississippi State was they were just out personneled in every facet of that game. I think Levy has done pretty good against Pete Kwiatkowski in the matchups that they've had. He's been able to move the ball pretty decently well. Even in 2024, I felt like Mississippi State moved the ball all right, but we were able to create turnovers, which obviously helped stop a lot of those drives. So I think it's an interesting matchup between those two guys, but I don't know what their quarterback situation is going to be with Blake Shapen going to be gone. And I mean, there's a lot of unknowns with this team too, in a sense. So I don't think Mississippi State's too much of a threat, but I do think that the matchup between Jeff Levy and Pete Kwiatkowski is a pretty interesting one to watch.
Well said. Anything from you, Peck?
No, I think it's going to end up being Kamario Taylor. That's their quarterback. And to be blunt, he's not a great passer yet. That's pretty much the extent to it. And defensively, they're just not very good right now. And who knows, maybe a year they're a little bit better. But you often see with these air raid offenses, they tend to have defenses that struggle over the course of a season because they're on the field for so long, because these tempo teams put their defenses on the field a lot throughout the season.
Yeah, they really, and you saw that in the Texas game. I mean, that tempo worked offensively, but yeah, as you said, there's a backside to that, and that defense was on the field a lot, especially as Texas kind of figured things out on offense. That's when the Mississippi State offense kind of clammed up. Texas got some 3-and-outs, and that defense for the Bulldogs was right back on the field. All right, guys, we're going to go to David McClellan real quick, and we'll see you in a sec.
Big financial decisions don't have to feel overwhelming. There's someone who can guide you every step of the way. David McClellan is a fiduciary financial advisor with Forum Financial, and he's working closely with his clients as a true financial life coach, guiding every aspect of your financial journey with expertise and care. If his name sounds familiar, that's because David was a swimmer at Texas and a member of several national championship teams. Today, he channels that same championship mindset into helping people win with their finances. David specializes in financial planning, and he's contributed numerous articles to Kiplinger on the topic of retirement tax bombs. And right now, David is offering viewers a free intro consultation to assess your financial situation. Do not miss this chance to get personalized guidance from a trusted expert. To schedule your free consult, email David at dmcclellan@forumfinancial.com, or you can call him directly at 312-933-8823. The contact info is in the description.
All right, guys, so we've got 1/3 of the schedule to go, and it's the part that everybody is kind of talking about when it comes to difficulty on this schedule, where the meat of the schedule is, and what really will define our season, in my opinion. November 7th at Mizzou, 3 or 4 away from Austin, with the home game being Arkansas. But we're starting with Mizzou, Columbia, Missouri. Not always an easy place to play. Drinkwitz is, I mean, I do like what he's doing with that program. Does that game concern you at all, considering it is on the road and what we looked like last year?
So with this game, I wouldn't say concern in the sense that I think we're going to lose this game, but I do definitely think it's a game where we can struggle like a Kentucky game in a sense. I went to a Mizzou game this year in Faurot Field, and even when they had the third-string quarterback out there, the fans showed up. The fans get loud, and it was relatively tough for A&M at a little bit of the start to score. But I'm not necessarily worried in the sense playing Drinkwitz, because I saw an interesting stat, I think it was a couple weeks ago, where when he plays teams that are above 500 in the SEC, then I don't think he's had a single win against any SEC team in his time in Missouri against a team above 500 in conference play. So I think that's a struggle right there, obviously, with him to win the big games. I don't know exactly who their quarterback's going to be next year, because I think Bo Pribula is going to be gone. I could be wrong, but other than that, I don't have too many thoughts going into this game. I think we can come out with a win, but I definitely wouldn't be surprised if we struggle.
How about you, Beck?
Yeah. I think it depends on who their quarterback is. If it's Pribula or if it's Zollers, I don't know how much you really fear that matchup. Defensively, I think they're going to take a step back, dependent on what they do in the portal, because they're going to lose Zion Young. I imagine Damon Wilson's going to enter the draft as well. And those were by far their two best players. And Trotter, the linebacker, who was an all SEC guy. That's three guys that I think are going to end up being drafted and inside the top 90, if I had to guess. So they lose a lot of talent on that side. I think they're going to end up getting Ahmad Hardy back, but Texas is usually a team that doesn't struggle to stop the run. And if it's Pribula or if it's Zollers, neither one of those guys have really shown you anything right now for you to fear them. Now, it's like you said, Texas has been terrible on the road this year, so that always changes the calculus. But I think in year two, with Arch Manning having another year to having another summer, another 3 installs to learn the offense and to get really comfortable, I think you'll see real growth there, and I don't think you're going to see the same struggles on the road.
I'd agree, man. You got to think that's going to be a major point of emphasis is getting better on the road, which is going to come down to being more disciplined as a football team, just being more comfortable in the environment that you're in. And so preparation is going to matter a lot. And we'll see a team that was very young on offense probably settle in and look a lot better, hopefully, on the road. All right, moving on. You go from one Tiger to another. This one is a different color and got a lot more people in the stands. And they've got a brand new head coach that obviously is another hot topic in college football. Lane Kiffin. Didn't really see coming into the 2025 season, the first Texas and LSU mashup featuring, Sark and Lane Kiffin. But here we are. Thoughts on what the Tigers are going to look like? That's plenty of time for Kiffin in this offense to find, he's going to be portal heavy. Plenty of time for them to kind of find their footing and set up a pretty dang big matchup, man, when the Horns come to town. What are y'all's thoughts?
Yeah, that's one of the two games that I think I'm going to take Texas to lose alongside Ohio State, because by mid-November, you imagine Kiffin's going to have the offense playing at a really high level, and Blake Baker's one of the 15 best DCs in the country. So you imagine they're going to be at least good on that side. If you imagine it'll be something like this year, not what it was 2 years ago. So if you're seeing a defense that's playing at a top 15 level and Lane Kiffin, that's always going to be a really tough matchup to see. So right now, that's not a matchup I feel super comfortable with.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting matchup. Just with Lane Kiffin, Steve Sarkisian, they're two of probably a lot of people would say the best offensive minds in the country. They're two of my favorite offensive minds. They go back to the USC days together where they were co-offensive coordinators on staff together. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what LSU does with the portal, what they do at the quarterback position, especially because Garrett Nussmeier is going to be gone. So you're going to be having a new guy behind center. And, I mean, the defense-wise, Pac touched on it, that Blake Baker's a good defense coordinator. The one place I will say that he has struggled that we've seen is when he plays mobile quarterbacks. He really does seem to struggle in those realms, but I don't know how much of a factor Arch plays with his legs in that game. But depending on what they do offensively, I think this is probably going to be our toughest road test of the year. And I think I could probably flip a coin on this game. I will go with Texas just because I'm a Texas fan. I'm just going to go with that. But I definitely would not be shocked if we end up laying an egg in this game.
It's going to be a very intense one. And yes, what does LSU do at the quarterback position? That's a big question, but it's Lane Kiffin. So you know that the guy, whoever he has almost, is going to be either good or great. And so Kiffin has instant offense, at the snap of his fingers at times. He is a great schemer, a great scripter. It's going to be a tough matchup. Either way, I think Texas will be pretty well prepared. Obviously, it was a couple of fun road games before that. It's going to be a big-time environment there. Obviously, Baton Rouge does it as well as anybody as far as making it tough on opponents. So we'll see, man. Can't wait for that one. It's going to be a mega matchup. Man, it's not an easy schedule. Don't let anybody on social media tell you that, because this is not an easy schedule. Even Arkansas, they come back to Austin. One of the weird quirks about the SEC schedule, you have a couple of rematch at the same – or games that are being played at the same venue as last year. Feel bad for the Pigs at all? I don't really feel bad for the Pigs at all. That's going to be one that they get up for, as always. What are y'all's thoughts on Arkansas? Also going to be under a new regime there.
I think Ryan Silverfield's a good coach. I don't really know how much more I have to say about that. I think they'll be better off at that point in the season than they were with Bobby Petrino. At the end, I think they were 2-8 going into us, so not much worse you can get at that point. But I do think it's going to be interesting to see how he does in SEC play, because you saw a lot of Arkansas fans kind of have the same reaction when A&M initially hired Mark Stoops, where they're trying to protest the hire and all that. Miss on a couple different candidates. But Arkansas will always get up for that game. They're one of those schools that you could say hates Texas more than they love themselves. So it's always going to be a heated game. I don't necessarily think it's going to be that close, to be completely honest. I could see it being somewhat of a – I don't know if I would say somewhat of a replica of this year, because I don't think they will do as much offensively next year. But I definitely think that Texas can win this game pretty handily.
I mean, they can't get worse on defense. You know what I mean? They can only get a little bit better. Similar to LSU, from their standard, they won't be any worse. They will be better. So, but how big of a jump can you make? And so that's why ultimately I think Texas can play with LSU. But since we're on the Arkansas game, I don't see any way Arkansas comes to town. How about you, Peck?
Yeah, I think you're going to see noticeable. I think they're going to be a lot better defensively next year. I think they made a really good hire today. I made two of them. They hired a DB coach who was at A&M from 2020 to 2023. And if you look at their past defenses during that time, it's pretty much entirely top 5 defenses in the SEC against the pass. Obviously, they hired Ron Roberts, who's one of the 5 smartest schemers in defensive football in terms of the country. So they're going to be better defensively. They hired the GM from Arizona, who's really, really good at his job too. So I think you're going to see a more talented roster. I think you're going to see a more well-structured defense as well. I don't think you're going to see as many just blown coverages as Arkansas had last year. I think they're going to be better. I think they're going to be more competent, but I think when you look at the matchup, Texas is just a lot more talented, and that's kind of what it comes down to in games like this. So I think you feel fine if you're Texas, but I don't think it's one of those where you look at it and you think it'll be similar to this year, or at least I don't.
I can see that, man. And my big concern is, they're going to be better coached. It's going to take them take time, obviously, to get the guys they need to really be difference makers on that defense, and do so that late into the season. They're going to have add a lot of depth. But no, great takes, and they did that is a much improved coaching staff almost immediately, in my opinion. I think they're on a really, really good track there. Like you said, Clint, I think Silverfield is going to be a good coach. Again, he's at a tough place right now to win, but I think hires are everything, and he's off to a good start. Now we'll see if he can get some guys in there. And moving on, you have the big finale. Texas goes back to Kyle Field. Texas dominated the Aggies at Kyle Field a couple of seasons back. Without a couple of silly turnovers, that's a 30-point win, guys. Marcel Reed should still be the signal caller for the Aggies at that point. And that alone gives me pretty good confidence going into that game, just the way that Texas has defended them. But hey, there's a chance they have a new offensive coordinator and look a lot different. What do y'all think, though?
I don't think they're going to be as good offensively as they were this year. I just put it plainly. They lose a lot of offensive linemen this year, which was their biggest. And you could say wide receiver, but I think the offensive line was probably their biggest strength in terms of their offense this year. Blocked very well. Next year, the running back core, I think it would probably be the same caliber, honestly. Do y'all know what year Le'Veon Moss is? Just out of curiosity.
I believe he's only a junior, but I could be wrong on that.
So if that's the case, he'll probably come back then. Depending if he's healthy at that time, they could be better in the run game. Wide receiver wise, they're not going to have Casey Conception, but they'll still have Craver, Ashton Bethel Roman, and they'll still have a pretty good wide receiver room. But I think just you have to wait to see what the offensive coordinator hire is, because that will really depend on what the team does offensively and how their team is for that whole year. But defensively, losing Jay Bateman, he wasn't the defensive play caller from what I understand, so I don't think that changes too much. But I think defensively, they'll still do the same, because Elko's been the play caller from everything I've understood. So it's always gonna be tough when you go to Kyle Field. I mean, that A&M fans, they get up for that game every year. That's what the game they mark on their calendar, and that's who they want to beat. They're fine with going 1-11 if they beat Texas. So I think it's going to be a ruckus environment. If we fix our road struggles, I feel pretty confident. But if we can't get our road struggles figured out and we're still struggling, going to Missouri, we have a really bad game, and going to LSU, we lay an egg. I would be a little bit worried about that game, but I think Texas will come out with a win.
How about you, Pac-Man?
Yeah, I don't share Clint's sentiment in the sense I don't think Kyle Field is as hard of a place as everyone thinks it is. To me, and I've talked to people about this. When you go there, it's not that it's hard to play at. It's just in terms of it's not an intimidating place to play. It's just really annoying because it's not you don't feel any level of intimidation. The crowd doesn't get you, and you're seeing a bunch of false starts. It's just a really annoying crowd. That's what you'll hear a lot of players say about them. And I just don't care who they have at OC as long as Marcel Reed's their quarterback. You can't make someone who can't see the field well see it. It's just kind of something that you have to be able to do and something you have to know. And again, it's the same thing with Elko that I'm going to say about Venables. Sarkisian knows how to play against Elko. And until anything changed in that regard, I don't have any fear of A&M. Even this year, Clint and I, we talked about that game, and I said Texas was going to win, and I felt pretty comfortable in that one. It played out kind of exactly as I thought it would. A&M just not the past 2 years, I felt like I've understood what A&M is. And based off of that, I just have zero fear in that team at all if I'm a Texas fan.
I'll be an honest, man. They're not great at linebacker. I know they're very high on Torian York and a couple of other guys, but they're not very impressive in that room. And I think that's going to be their ultimate undoing in the college football playoff. Again, they won 11 games, but that defense is far off from what Mike Elko wants. And then I think, as you just said, Sark kind of, he's got his hand in the Elko cookie jar. He knows what's going on there. And again, they'll use the portal. They'll probably find a couple guys. They'll add another receiver. They'll add some DBs. They'll probably add linebackers. But I think Texas is in a pretty good spot in that game. Yeah, Kyle Field's never easy to win at. I understand that. I get the annoyance part, though. Definitely, Pac. I can see that. I see it all the time. I used to live in that town. But there's just, to me, as Pac said, Marcel really doesn't see the field very well. He feels a rush a little too early sometimes, puts his head straight down, and then it's kind of easy pickings from there. So, guys, we're going to do one more sponsor break real quick. We're going to go to Laura Baker, and we'll talk some defense. We're finally getting there, defense.
If you're looking for a home in the Austin area, there's only one number to call. That's Laura Baker at 512-784-0505. Laura's a part of the elite Andy Allen team at Keller Williams Realty. She's helped Longhorns find their dream homes all over Central Texas. You can just ask our very own Ian Boyd, who moved from Michigan to Texas with Laura's help. Whether you're searching in Austin, Round Rock, Georgetown, San Marcos, or even parts of the 254 or the 210, Laura has you covered. So call 512-784-0505, or you can email her at laura@andyallenteam.com. She's a Longhorn, a friend of Inside Texas, and the person you need to call to get your next home in Central Texas. Call Laura Baker today. Contact info is in the description.
All right, guys. We are going to get this off stage. We're back. Has Texas hired a running back coach? Not yet. I know they seem to be zeroing in a lot of scuttle about the Florida running back coach. I think that would be a really good acquisition, to be honest with you. Anytime we're getting a guy that has recruiting skins in the state of Florida, is able to evaluate the way he has. I mean, Jaden Ball looks pretty dang good. I'll say that. But all right, guys, let's get to defense. Fun part. Yes, Texas defense. Early in the season, a lot of people expected really, really big things, obviously. Many early said, the defense was really, really solid, even through like a third of the season. And a lot of that hung on the fact that Texas held Ohio State to 14 yards, limited Jeremiah Smith and that team to the cross midfield twice. But Texas wasn't tested in that game. Let's be real. One of the only times they really tested down the field, Carnell Tate burned us and got Jalen Gilbo for a touchdown. this defense seemed to be a little bit softer, than we were hoping. Obviously, that didn't seem they were. It's not in the way that they not that they weren't physical, but just talking about coverage. That was the big thing for me. Florida obviously was the first team to really punish Texas and take advantage of that. And being real, Oklahoma even had some opportunities that they didn't take advantage of because John Mateer was kind of flushing pockets early and pass rush got to him. But y'all's thoughts overall on the secondaries play? Was it more of is it a scheme issue? Is it they're trying, are they scheming to our capabilities, and maybe our capabilities were just less than we thought? Obviously, we had some injuries. Pack started off for me on this one though. Just your overall takes on the defense in 2025 and kind of what went wrong as far as not maybe reaching the standard that we all hope for.
Yeah, so obviously it starts with, I think in October, Michael Taft got hurt sometime around then, and that was a noticeable loss. I felt like in terms of communication, you could really see guys didn't know what their assignments were. Some of it's also you face Pete Witkowski a second time for a lot of these OCs. He doesn't change a whole lot, right?
Right.
What you saw last year is what you saw this year, so there's more comfort in seeing him again a second time. You're a little bit more prepared for what you're going to get. You're going to get a lot of cover three. You're going to get Tampa 2 out of dime on third down. You're going to occasionally get cover one pressures, but really there's not a whole lot of split safety in there. You don't see a lot of cover two. You don't see a lot of quarter half. You don't really see a lot of complexity in terms of what they're running. So that doesn't help, right? Because you're putting your players at a position where they just have to out execute whoever's across from them on the line of scrimmage. And that's not going to happen consistently in the SEC when you play some of the offenses that Texas did this year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one. And then in addition to not being super schematically complex, when you have really young guys out there in the defensive backfield, you're gonna inevitably have busts. We saw this with Phil Sami. We saw this with Kobe Black at times. We saw this even with guys like Cade Phillips. This is naturally going to happen when you're playing a bunch of freshmen and sophomores who haven't played a whole lot and didn't get to play early in the year. So inexperience doesn't help. Not being super complex certainly doesn't help either. And you really didn't see a whole lot of ripless cover three from Texas this year, which is something you saw a lot more last year, which I felt like was a good change up for them. So a lack of complexity in terms of the defense, and then the linebackers being so-so. Anthony Hill had some good games, but you can turn on his tape and you'll find him misfitting quite a bit in each game, which isn't something that you expect to see of him. Same thing with LaFau towards the end of the year. You can't really say that about Ty Anthony Smith, but he didn't play a whole lot. So all those things play a factor in terms of why the Texas defense is maybe not as good as what we had thought it would be heading into the season.
Well said, man. Anything that you think you missed out on there, Clint?
Not really. I think going to the season, obviously you lost a lot on defense of the draft. I think especially with the interior defensive line, I think you probably had a little bit of a drop off in overall talent. You had Vernon Broughton and Alfred Collins, and you had Bill Norton, all those guys on the inside. And I think that the depth at that position was a lot better than it was this year. You obviously had some guys playing first year in the secondary. Grayson Littleton, I think, did a good job. You had Jalen Gilbo being moved to corner, which I thought was horrendous to watch. But yeah, you lost Makuba, you lost Barron, who Barron was a Thorpe Award winner. So it's one of those areas where it's hard to really replace that type of production when you have a guy win an award for the best player in the nation at that position. So a lot of that just had to do with, in my opinion, having inexperienced guys and new personnel out there. But also, like you said, you did really see it start to happen after Kentucky when we had to go without Michael Taft versus Mississippi State. You really started to see that defense get gashed downfield with throws. Even in Georgia with PK, what Pac was saying, when you're playing, and we talked about this in our show actually, that you can't be playing 8 yards off the receivers and expect to stop Georgia consistently, because they'll take those dump offs that you're going to give them. They'll take those crossers. They'll take the short yardage because they have guys who can make a lot of yards after the catch. So I think it's a good mix of the new personnel, a little bit of drop offs at each position group, and part of PK's game management. But other than that, don't really have much to add.
No, y'all nailed it, guys. I mean, are y'all okay with the bend but don't break style? Is that something that, like the Pack, are you a fan of that? Would you like to see a little, as you said, a little bit more aggression, a little bit more, there's a big difference in what Texas lines up and looks like every down basis compared to what like an Oklahoma does. You know what I mean? They are throwing almost a kitchen sink at you as far as looks and trying to confuse and disguise things. With Texas, at times, what you see is what you get.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that I'm opposed to a bend don't break defense. I think kind of naturally that's what a lot of the best defenses are. This is what Ohio State is a lot, where it's you might get 20 yards, but at some point we're going to get a tackle for loss. We're going to get you behind the chains. And once we get you into third down, our rush packages, our pressure paths, our sims, our different ways that we can disguise things is really, really complex. And it's basically a lost drive at that point. This is the same thing that Georgia does, where they're not going to get an immediate 3 and out, but you're not going to go 75 yards on them 14 plays consistently, because eventually they're going to get you into 3rd and 7+. And once you get into 3rd and 7+, then it's time for Schumann to run whatever pressure path he wants. And anyone who watched this past Saturday knows what happens when you give him the ability to live in 3rd and long when you can't run the ball. So I don't necessarily think it's a be bend don't break. I think it's got to be a little bit more of being a little bit more like Georgia, being a little bit more like what Florida was last year, being more like what Miami is, more like what Oklahoma is, where you're running a lot of different things, right? You don't need to be super complex, but you have to be able to switch some things up. Georgia doesn't run a whole lot of different things on first down. They predominantly run mid-4 mod, and they run some version of mint running a 3-deep zone, whether that's sky rotation, buzz rotation, it doesn't matter. They don't do a lot of things on first down. OU's a bit different in that they'll run a lot of 5-man and 6-man stuff on first down. But you've got to have a little bit more than just running cover 3 on first down and showing it from single high and having no element of disguise, where teams will start running 4 open on you, and now you're forced to show single high and you're not switching anything up, and it's easier to play against as a quarterback. So not necessarily anything to do with bend don't break. I don't have a problem with that. I think naturally every defense is bend don't break, but I do think you need to add more to the package. You have to figure out ways to confuse quarterbacks and to take coordinators out of the game, because that's what they do a great job of. They do a great job of taking the game out of the coordinator's hands and putting it all on the quarterback. And this is what Georgia does to Texas really, really well.
Mm-hmm. They made it very, very easy for Gunnar Stockton in that game. He did not have to do anything crazy to beat Texas. He did make a couple of timely throws, but very well schemed up was Texas against Georgia, unfortunately. Defense fell on the coaching. I will say this about that. When everybody kind of coming into the season, the biggest question mark on this defense was cornerback number 2 and who would get that nod. And, we had hoped, obviously, it was Jalen Gilbo. That didn't work out. So that's a failed experiment from the jump. And so obviously Texas at that point tried to trot out a couple of other younger guys, Kobe Black and Cade Phillips, against a Florida team and they were still running a lot of man coverage early, and we got torched in that regard. So good. And also we were missing Manny Muhammad. That needs to be said. That was big. But you have Yobo, 2 youngsters, and they really, really struggled with that one. Cade Phillips obviously made very big strides throughout the season, but he had a rough couple of reps in that game. So is that on coaching? Yeah, a little bit, because you got to know what you have, man. And maybe, with the spring portal window, you've, in my opinion, you've seen enough action to know, like, hey, CB2 might be something we really need to go out and try and find here. And I will say, yeah, we do have to get the portal right. Absolutely. There is a possibility that this team misses the playoffs again if you miss out on the portal. If you do not do something about the interior line, you don't add a little bit of pop at the running back position, in my opinion. You do have to get the portal right. It's going to be very important that we do so. A lot of other teams are going to be also trying to do the same dang thing. As far as position, let's do this. Guys on this defense obviously we're losing some big names on this defense. We're losing some leadership on this defense. Guys that are returning that maybe you didn't see them a ton this year, but maybe they're down on the depth chart. Maybe we just saw little flashes here or there. A couple of names from each of you, if you don't mind. Clint, we'll start with you. That you think maybe really take a jump for this Texas defense, and guys that are somewhat household names as far as Texas fans go?
Yeah, so my first guy I think is gonna be Kobe Black. I think you saw him play really well against A&M, especially in the second half when we went more man-to-man coverage. I think he did really well, considering the opponents considering the receivers he was going against, and obviously he had that game-sealing interception against Marcel, stopped on a dime and dove back for it. He was a guy that I think was on and off this year, but I think that he has the real potential to improve a lot and become a big guy on our defense next year.
Well said. How about you, Pack?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to one that I've been high on all season, and that's Brad Spence. If you can move Brad Spence back to linebacker and go watch how Ohio State uses Arvell Reese, I think there's a lot of different things that Brad Spence can do in that vein, where you watch his tape and you see him take on blocks off the edge and you see him take off. You see him, there's a clip I can show people where he's ragdolling the Kentucky center who weighs something like 320 pounds. He's a really strong guy, Brad Spence is. So to me, that's something that I would want to see him play more as a linebacker and really move him all around. Where I think that's what we thought we were going to see with. I think that's what we thought we were going to see with Anthony Hill, and you didn't see that a whole lot. Texas was pretty static in terms of how they used him. So learning from that and being able to be creative with Brad Spence, who I think if you use him how Ohio State used Arvell Reese, I think he's a future first-round pick. I'm going to keep giving praise to Ty Anthony Smith. I think he's going to be a guy who's really, really good for Texas next year. And then one more, I'll go Justice Terry. I think you're going to see him play more next year. And the limited tape he had this year I thought was really, really good, not just from having an understanding of how to rush the passer, but being 275 or whatever he is and being as good as he was in the run game as a 3 technique was really encouraging.
Really well said on Justice, man. A lot of people, Michael Taft makes that interception, which at that point kind of felt like the dagger to Texas A&M. Go look at Justice Terry on that play and the impact that he has on that offensive lineman, which impacts Marcel Reed and his timing of the throw. Really impressed in the limited, action we saw from Justice. You got to make sure you hang on to this guy. You got to make sure you hang on to Kobe Black. The portal can get wild and silly, and we know how things operate. Hang on for dear life, because it's, I think, a long, rangy defensive back like Kobe Black, who seemed to come on late as he did, obviously. We need that guy in the fold for sure, because obviously quarterback was an issue. Mr. David Keith Williams, sir, you're doing a really good job right now. I mean, you're in the comment section here. Terrible last half of the season. I mean, call it what it was. That defense fell apart. Now injuries were a part of it. Injuries did start to, compile a little bit in that secondary, and that's when things got a little bit silly. And so, as far as do we need a new DC? I think, we'll see what happens this year with PK. I'm not going to go as far as saying that. But we definitely did see, an improved unit. And I think obviously the A&M game, in a lot of minds we're like, wow, that's A&M offense is so dang good. And this is such a great game from our defense. If you look at that game on the flip side of things, like we ran a very vanilla basic game plan that A&M really couldn't take advantage of. As far as coverage and confusing Marcel Reed, I mean, we're pretty simplistic with a lot of cover 2, cover 3. So to me, it's like, is that a paper tiger, performance? I'm sure hoping not. Pack, any comments on that and just kind of how that went with A&M? And was that more about, A&M or more about Texas there?
More about Marcel Reed. Yeah, I mean, just go watch him against South Carolina. Go watch him in the first half of LSU. That's kind of what he is. You watch him against Notre Dame. He's lucky he didn't have 5 interceptions in that game. He threw a lot of balls that should have been picked in that game too. I think that's kind of what he is against these competent defenses. Is he's kind of just that. I don't know that it's a ton about Texas, although I do think they played well. And I think the most encouraging thing was you didn't have busted assignments like you had heading into the week. So some of it, Texas, I would attribute a lot to Marcel Reed, though.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of the same boat, man. You know, I played on one hand, it's like, yeah, we covered really well. We tackled well. We made plays on the ball when we had opportunities late in the game. But at the same time, as I said earlier, Marcel was putting his head down pretty dang early sometime, trying to find the rush instead of feeling it, which obviously gives his option up to look downfield and find a receiver. Sometimes he was just raising his head up in the last moment, knowing the pass rush was coming and, you know, spiking a ball or throwing a ball really wide. So, yeah, kind of mirror your thoughts there as well. Let's say this, or where was this comment? Sorry, I'm trying to find you where that was. Yeah, I definitely agree. The two biggest mishaps by this coaching staff in the last offseason, wherever your comment was, David, I'll find it in a minute. It was the fact that CB2 and the O-line looked like it did. So you got to think that these are very important positions, that there's no way in hell Texas comes out unprepared as they were or as inexperienced, you know, as we were, and just I imagine we see a heavy focus, obviously, in the portal. We're talking about it a lot here on Inside Texas right now for dang good reason, because we need to use it. Any positions now? Last defensive position grouping or portal question I'll ask, but any position groups that you really think Texas has to attack here in the portal, and if so, what type of prospect would you like to see? And if you have any names that you've already seen have plans to enter the portal, and you're like, hey, Texas needs to go after that cat, who are they?
I'd say safety. Not that it's in. I think McDonald's going to come back. That's like the current idea I have, based on what I've heard. I think you just need more insurance for whoever's going to play opposite McDonald. Bringing in a transfer too. If it's someone like Khalil Barnes, if it's whoever it is, it also is a really good opportunity for Phil Sami and Williams and JJR and all those guys to have some competition and know that they need to step their game up and take it a little more seriously. So I think you have to bring a transfer in at safety, especially knowing what it looked like this year without Michael Taft. You need a guy who knows how to run a defense, how to call a defense, how to communicate on the back end and get everything in. So safety, I'm not so concerned about corner. If you keep Kobe Black, I feel pretty comfortable with what it is. And I think knowing that you're probably going to retain Wardell Mack, that gives you some flexibility in terms of what you're going to be able to do, whether that's at star or at corner, if you want to move Littleton outside and then put Mack inside, or you want to keep Littleton inside and keep Black outside, or put Black in the slot and then put Littleton outside. You have options with those three guys, so I'm not super worried about DBs outside of safety. Linebackers, I think the room is going to be really, really good next year. You bring in Tyler Atkinson, who might end up starting day one because of how good he is.
Yep.
And then you may want one or two defensive linemen, dependent on what Hero Canoe does. You're probably going to lose 3 or 4 guys there, maybe more. Could be as high as 5. So you do need a little bit of depth there, knowing that the guys that are going to be backups next year, probably the sophomores, and that's probably, you don't want guys who haven't played at all to be valuable depth. So maybe 1 or 2 transfers there, but that's about it for me. I don't think the defense needs a lot of retooling.
Yeah, I was going to say probably the same thing. I think probably the place where we need our most retooling just on the side of the ball is offense, but defensively, I think safety is a good place. I definitely think the D line was what my answer was going to be. Definitely getting a depth piece or two, because I mean, you're probably losing Cole Brevard, Travis Shaw, Levon Johnson. You're losing a couple guys at that position group. So I think getting some depth pieces won't be bad. The edges, I mean, that's probably the last place that we need to get any portal guys. In all honesty, I think we're really good there. You're going to have Lance Jackson, Colin Simmons, Colton Vasek, all those guys come back. Corners, I feel fine with. And then linebacking core, I'm with Pack on this. I think that will be good there. So I think D-line would probably be first, just to get some depth, and then safety, obviously, get one guy.
I definitely agree with you guys. And to this comment here, I'm pretty sure that Pack was talking about Jonah Williams in that regard. Yeah, Derek Williams did enter the portal today, but to be honest, that was going to be a pretty tough path to more, to the playing time that, he got his first year in Austin, and obviously, before his injury. Jonah needs, in my opinion, just to be pushed. Jonah is also a guy that's going to be missing spring because of baseball. And so I would feel more comfortable in that room if you did add a more experienced, safety, a guy that's coming in and proven himself. And now there are options. Obviously, you talked about Barnes. So, yeah, develop these guys. I understand that. They definitely do need to keep working, talking about Xavier Filsaime, talking about Jonah Williams. But we cannot afford, to take that chance, in my opinion, because what if they do not come as far along as we need them to? Jonah still has a lot to work on as a safety, but he's going to be a really dang good player. So, again, this bowl season is very big for him because he gets a lot of extra work right now that he wasn't obviously getting last spring. And as you both said, and this comment says as well, you must have defensive line depth. We're going to go heavy again at D line, maybe not as heavy last year. People are going to be like, oh, no, not again. We have so much. No, we have to do this. You have to have depth in the defensive line. You have to be prepared to play 8 straight games in SEC play to finish the season. You got to have depth. And as you guys mentioned, we're losing quite a bit there. So, all right, last thing we're going to get to. Somebody asked it way up earlier in the comments, but we've seen the schedule. We know Texas is going to look a little bit different after the portal. Like, that's a guarantee. We know that other teams are going to look a little bit different after the portal. All types of coaching changes. Texas plays four coaches who will be at their school for coaching for their first season. What's the ceiling? What's the floor for 2026? Early look. It'll be fun to come back and check in on this. But what's your early ceiling and floor for Texas next season?
I think a floor probably, I want to say maybe like 9-3. 8-4, obviously, I think is a possibility just because, you do have a lot of tough games that you have on your schedule. But I think for the ceiling, if the team plays as good as they can because they have the talent to do this. They're a very talented bunch. They're not undermanned at all. I think that obviously you have the possibility with this roster. No. So I think that's the ceiling. But obviously that's probably not going to happen. I think maybe a 10-2 is more likely of what will happen. But I think the floor I would go with 8-4 just with how tough that last stretch is. And then I think the ceiling is obviously going to be 12-0 when you have a program like this, when you have the team like this who they have a talented roster and they have coaches capable of doing it. It's just executing it.
Well said, Pac. How about you, brother?
I think the floor is going to be 9-3. I think worst case, Texas loses one game each month. Best case, 11-1. I don't think you're going to go through an SEC schedule without a loss when it's 9 games. I just think there's too much attrition you're going to see. There's too many good teams you're going to play on a week-by-week basis. We saw this year with Kentucky, Mississippi State, and then just the way that it went down this year. I think there's a lot of really good teams. The SEC's got NFL players on each roster, and they've got multiple. So it's going to be a battle every week. SEC on the road in the SEC. Kirby Smart wasn't lying when he said that. So I think 11-1's the ceiling just because of what the SEC is, especially when you look at a 9-game conference schedule.
What about the floor, though? That's 9-3. 9-3. Okay, yeah, you said that. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I think I agree with you guys. I think Texas is going to be aggressive enough in the portal, and they're going to have a good understanding of really where to improve and attack in that regard. And so I'm going 9-3 floor, which is the same floor I had this past season. I had 11-1 ceiling. I'm going to go back to that again because, like you just said, Pac, you're going to find a game that either you lose against a really good team or a game that sneaks up on you. That last 4 games is concerning when you play 3 of the 4 on the road, considering that we're going to have 8 straight games there at some point. But again, Texas is a lot deeper than most teams in college football at some of these really important positions. We need Arch to stay upright and healthy, which obviously starts with the offensive line. And I think assuming Texas is going to do a very good job in the portal at, in improving that offensive line. I know they're very, very properly motivated to do so. But gentlemen, I really do appreciate you joining me. Any final takes for any of these guys in the comments or anyone watching out there?
Not really.
All right. Well, that's going to be a wrap for our Thursday Night Live show. I do appreciate everyone being here for it. But real quick, guys, go ahead and remember to hop on over to InsideTexas.com. Take advantage of that flash sale. You're joining right now today for $1. So go hop over there and do it. Go be a part of the community, and you can go talk Texas football right after this. But yeah, thanks. Really active in the comment section tonight, especially Mr. David Keith Williams. Appreciate you finishing us off with a bang there. But yeah, until next time, guys, we calling it a wrap.